American Revolution, no United States Constitution, no American presidents, no United States as we know it today. It sounds impossible, but in the summer of 1776, that future was frighteningly close to becoming reality. The American Revolution had barely begun. The colonies had declared independence from Britain, but declaring freedom and winning freedom were two very different things. The British Empire was the most powerful force on earth. Its army was experienced, its navy ruled the oceans, its resources seemed endless. Against them stood a poorly equipped army led by a man named George Washington. Many of his soldiers were farmers. Some were teenagers. Many had never fought a real battle before. And within weeks, Washington and his army would find themselves trapped, outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded. The American cause was on the verge of complete collapse. Yet somehow, against all odds, Washington escaped. Historians still call it one of the most remarkable military withdrawals in history. And behind that escape stood ordinary soldiers whose courage may have saved not only a general, but an entire nation. This is the story of the night America almost died, and the men who refused to let it happen. Chapter 1. A revolution begins by 1776. Tensions between Britain and its American colonies had reached a breaking point. For years, colonists had complained about taxes imposed by a government thousands of miles away. They believed their rights were being ignored. Britain believed it was simply maintaining order in its empire. Neither side was willing to back down. On July the 4th, 1776, the colonies declared independence. It was one of the boldest political acts in history. But there was a problem. Signing a declaration did not magically create a country. The British government considered the colonists rebels, and Britain intended to crush the rebellion before it could spread. King George III was determined to restore control. Soon, one of the largest military forces ever sent across the Atlantic arrived in North America. Its mission was simple: destroy George Washington's army, capture the rebel leaders, end the revolution. Forever. Chapter 2. The British Giant arrives in August 1776. Thousands of British troops landed near New York City. The city was strategically important. Control New York and you controlled one of the most valuable ports in America. Washington knew this. The British knew it too. The British force numbered more than 30,000 soldiers and sailors. Many were professional veterans. Some had fought in wars across Europe. The Americans had fewer troops and far less experience. As British forces advanced, Washington attempted to defend Brooklyn Heights on Long Island. What followed was a disaster. The British launched a massive attack. Using superior numbers and tactics, they outmaneuvered the Americans. Confusion spread across the battlefield. American soldiers were pushed back. Some units became separated. Others were surrounded. Men fled through fields and forests, trying to escape. The battle became a nightmare. By the end of the day, Washington's army had retreated behind defensive positions near the East River. And then the horrifying reality became clear. They were trapped. Behind them was water. In front of them stood the British army. The revolution itself appeared trapped alongside them. Chapter 3. The end seems certain. That evening, British commanders celebrated. They believed victory was inevitable. Washington had nowhere to go. The next morning, British forces could launch a final assault. The rebel army would be destroyed. The rebellion would end. Many British officers assumed the war was practically over. Meanwhile, inside the American camp, fear spread. Soldiers whispered around campfires. Some wrote letters home. Others wondered if they would survive the next day. The numbers were terrifying. More than 9,000 American troops were crowded into a shrinking defensive position. If captured, the revolution would lose its army. Without an army, independence would become little more than a dream. Washington understood exactly how serious the situation was. He knew he could not win a battle, but perhaps he could save the army. And if the army survived, the revolution might survive too. That night, he made a decision that would change history. Chapter 4. The impossible plan. Washington's plan sounded almost impossible. Every soldier, every cannon, every horse, every piece of equipment would have to be moved across the East River at night, in complete silence, under the nose of the British Army. The operation would require hundreds of boat trips. One mistake could destroy everything. A single musket fired accidentally, a soldier shouting, a boat overturning. Any of these could alert the British, and if that happened, thousands of men could be killed or captured. Still, there was no alternative. The evacuation began after sunset. Small boats slipped quietly across the dark water. Men climbed aboard. Rowers worked silently. No drums, no commands shouted, only the sound of water moving beneath wooden boats. Hour after hour, the operation continued. The tension was unbearable. Every minute brought the possibility of discovery, yet somehow the British remained unaware. Chapter 5. The Men Who Stayed Behind. But a major problem remained. The evacuation was taking too long. Dawn was approaching. Thousands of troops had crossed safely, but others were still waiting. Someone had to stay behind. Someone had to maintain the illusion that the American army remained in position. This was one of the most dangerous jobs imaginable. If discovered, these men would likely be killed or captured. Yet volunteers stepped forward. Throughout the night, soldiers continued patrols. Campfires remained lit. Guards walked their positions. The Americans deliberately created the appearance of a normal military camp. The British saw nothing unusual. They believed Washington's army was still preparing for battle. Meanwhile, the evacuation continued. Boat after boat crossed the river. The fate of a revolution depended on every crossing. The men who remained behind knew the risks, yet they stayed, because they understood something larger than themselves. If Washington escaped, America might live. If he failed, everything could be lost. Chapter 6. The Fog That Changed History. Then something extraordinary happened. As dawn approached, a thick fog rolled across the river. Not a light mist, a dense, heavy fog, the kind that hides everything. Visibility dropped dramatically. British observers could barely see ahead of them. The fog acted like a giant curtain, concealing the final stages of the evacuation. For generations, Americans would wonder about this moment. Was it luck? A miracle? A gift from nature? Whatever the answer, the fog bought precious time. The final soldiers crossed the river, the final boats departed, and Washington himself escaped, just before the British realized what was happening. Chapter 7. Morning Shock. When daylight finally arrived, British forces prepared to finish the job. They expected an easy victory. They expected prisoners. They expected surrender. Instead, they found something astonishing. The American positions were empty. No army, no Washington, no revolution to destroy. The rebels had vanished. An entire army had escaped right under their noses. British commanders could hardly believe it. One of the greatest opportunities of the war had slipped away. The revolution was still alive. And because it was alive, the war would continue. Conclusion. The night that saved America. George Washington would go on to lead the American cause for years. Eventually, the colonies would win independence. Washington would become the first president of the United States. His face would become one of the most recognizable in history. But none of that was guaranteed on that dark night in 1776. The future of America rested on ordinary people, boatmen rowing silently through darkness, soldiers standing guard while others escaped, men willing to risk everything for an idea they believed in. History often remembers famous leaders, but sometimes the course of history is changed by people whose names are rarely mentioned. Without their courage, George Washington might have been captured. Without Washington, the revolution might have failed. And without the revolution, the world we know today might look very different. That is why many historians still consider the escape from Brooklyn one of the most important nights in American history. A night when defeat seemed certain. A night when hope almost disappeared. and a night when ordinary men helped save the future of a nation.